Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a very full of energy. Good morning. Today it's a very special day. We see all the settings in here in the Spirit Center, folks visiting us from far. Like every time, this is a very special day. May Jesus shine light on our heads. May He bring our hearts to peace so that we could really forget our problems and our difficulties and trying to really. So our goal here is to really live Jesus' teachings, and this is our moment. It's our spiritual, food, so to speak. So it's important for us to understand and see that. So may Jesus bless our hearts. May the good spirits stay with us, assist us. That certainly, once we leave that door, once we enter this door, we've been hugged, we've been cared for, and everything has been given to us. And also, what's good for us, because sometimes we ask for things that are not good for us. And of course, God knows what's good for us. So, with that in mind, that gives us the strength. And may the Celestial Father keep us in His arms. Once again, we like to remind everyone, we've spoken about this several weeks ago, that after a year plus, we've been, hiding our faces and not really were, seeing each other. We are now trying to really show our smiles, and it was difficult, but now things are getting better. We don't have the obligation to wear masks. Of course, it's up to everyone. You either wear or not wear masks. It's not mandatory any longer. Of course, we also give a suggestion that if you go into a closed place, right, like a supermarket or a store, people that we know, places that we know there are going to be people gathering. Now, it's never too much to prevent and use what we can to do our parts. Of course, let's quasi-normal situation that we have now, and we have the opportunity to do so. So let's take care of ourselves. Not It's not all gone yet. We're still going through the pandemic. Let's do our parts, because the only thing that we can do and hope for is that. So let's keep that in mind so that we can continue we can overcome and leave this in the past. Well, today you saw we're very happy that I can't control myself. So we have a very good friend that is always here with us. And with all the pandemic, he has not been able to come with us. He has a couple of online lectures with us here before, but it's really, really good. He's he's a works in the Spiritist Center. I mean, he works in yeah. He travels all over the world, going and trying to find right. And now he's also a book author, and I'm gonna. He's won 2 awards. His book has won 2 awards. Our Road to Damascus. It's in Amazon. He's brought some books here in person to be sold, and it's great. It's a great book. Even the title by itself gave us a lot of interest. What's our own road to Damascus? So if you would like to acquire this at the end, you can stop by at the back. So it gives us really the opportunity to touch, right, in the ocean of the teachings of Jesus and our own journeys. So here's our invitation, so that if you would like, of course, if there's no more here, here, it's on Amazon, and we can always acquire it on Amazon. So with that in mind, let's do our initial prayer, so that we can really connect even more with the spirituality has provided us for. So let us close our eyes. That's how we can disconnect from everything that distracts us, and we look inside of us, thanking Jesus and also the good spiritual friends that are responsible for this Spirited Center, this house of love, under the supervision of our mentor. Thanking dearly for all the care that they've provided to us. And we'll keep asking them to continue helping us, so that together we could really thank our professor, Jesus, for all his teachings, for all his love that's unconditional to all of us, for his tolerance, for his patience to all of us. And with that in mind, we'd like to tell you, Jesus, dear friend, we'd like to tell you about our happiness today, that we are here gathered in your name. We would like to understand a little more your teachings, so that we could, in the unfolding of our day to day activities, match that to our behaviors, to our thoughts, to our words, and also to act. With that in mind, Jesus, we ask you once again, help us out, help us connect our souls, so that the teachings that we'll learn this morning may not only be heard, but also be applied to our actions. We thank you once again for our dear friend Dan, who very very kindly come here in order to bring and to share your teachings with all of us. In your name, Jesus, in the name of our Father, I would like to ask the permission to start our meeting this morning. Amen. Let us welcome our dear friend, Dan Assisi.
Tem que olhar aqui no relógio para saber se amanhã, se é tarde.
I'm gonna look at the my watch to see if it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I'm a little confused.
Tudo bem com você?
Is everybody okay?
Bom dia.
Good morning.
Com imenso prazer
It's with immense pleasure
que eu mando para vocês um caloroso
that I
abraço
send you a big hug
imenso lá da Califórnia.
from California.
Muito contente
I'm very
de estar com
happy
vocês hoje,
to be with you today again, celebrating you guys,
celebrando essa
celebrating
oportunidade especial
this opportunity
de
that's very
estarmos entre
special
amigos
to be amongst friends,
e podermos
and
presencialmente
also to be here physically present,
não vejo pessoas assim ao vivo, né? De estar
live,
juntos no que tem sido assim um programa
to
nos anos conturbados e
live,
diferentes, né?
which without a doubt has been very
Então,
troublesome
se
years.
vocês tiverem paciência,
So today, if you have the patience, we would like to start with a story that you may already know, but it's a very interesting one for our own times. It's a parable, it's a story that Jesus told us 2,000 years ago that arrives today more actual than ever. We're trying to find what's going on with the technology connection here.
Tocar na tela com o mouse. Isso. Vamos ver aqui.
All right.
Muito bem, muito obrigado. Nossos mentores, nós temos mentores
So
espirituais
we have
que muitas vezes
spiritual mentors. We also have, technical mentors, technology mentors.
espirituais, muitas vezes a gente não vê os mentores,
Sometimes we don't see our
mas
spiritual mentors, but the technology mentors are always there.
atrás, né,
Even though we don't
temos
see,
dois mentores
we have
tecnológicos
two spiritual or technology mentors
e eu
that are
acredito
talking
que
to us.
vão se encabular bastante se todos olharem para eles
So if everyone sees and looked at outside, Dan is his uncharacteristic
e esse
way of
pessoal
making fun
trabalham
of the.
literalmente
So he's really thanking
para nos
all of us that are
fazer
behind the scenes making this event work.
estarmos juntos aqui com o microfone e também
So this is gives us an opportunity for us to be here with the microphone and together
mas como
make it happen.
como eu dizia, a
So
parábola
as I
do
was
filho
saying,
pródigo é uma grande
the
demonstração
parable of the prodigal
e
son,
eu acho que
it's a
condizente
beautiful
nos tempos
parable
conturbados em que
because it
vivemos.
really matches the difficult times that we are living these days.
Nós encontramos essa história em
So
Lucas,
we find this
um dos
story in the
quatro evangelistas.
Gospel of Luke, one of the four
É muito
evangelists.
interessante porque só aparece em
It's
Lucas
interesting because it only
e ela vem
shows up in Luke,
depois de dois outros
and
também
it comes after two other stories.
resgate de alguém ou de algo que está perdido.
So it's really the rescue of something that's
A
lost.
historinha da ovelha que se perde, né?
Have you seen the lost sheep story?
Uma
And
historinha muito
there's on
interessante.
this story that
É um capítulo maravilhoso.
it's a great chapter
O capítulo de Lucas
because in this chapter of
fala
Luke
de nós
we
encontrarmos
see the
o que
importance
está perdido.
for us to rescue
Nesse contexto de
what's
hoje, se
lost.
vocês me permitirem,
And in the
eu
context
gostaria
of
de falar
today,
um pouquinho a
we'd
respeito
like
da
to
parábola do filho
start
pródigo.
talking about
A
that.
palavra pródigo
And the word
significa
prodigal
extravagante,
means extravagant,
digamos assim, desantenado, né?
maybe a little
Gastando
disconnected,
muito dinheiro. Então, é uma coisa
or
interessante para a
spending
gente
too much money, and
conversar
so
a
forth.
respeito disso. Quem sabe se a gente
So
consegue
maybe after we
perceber
talk about this,
se
we could
existem conexões
understand some parallel connections between our
na
lives
sociedade.
and our lives in society, our spiritual lives and our lives in
Se
society,
tiver
rather.
paciência, a gente
So
vai
if you have the
entender
patience,
e saber o que a gente está fazendo
of
de
course,
uma
we are
forma
here
assim,
trying to really
um
talk
pouco
about it.
mais longa.
It's a little long
20,
parable,
né? E dois
about
versículos.
21
Se vocês
verses.
tiverem paciência com a gente,
If you have the patience to do that, to go
nós
there
vamos
with
ler.
me, we can get it done.
E disse
And he said,
Jesus, Jesus contando a
Jesus,
história.
of course, was telling the story, and he said,
Certo homem
there was a man
tinha dois
who had
filhos.
2 sons,
E o mais moço
and the younger of them
disse ao
said
pai:
to his father,
Vamos ver se a gente consegue aqui. Pai, dá-me a parte da fazenda
Father, give me the share of
que
property
me
that is
pertence.
coming to me. And he divided his property between them.
O filho mais novo, ajuntando tudo,
So the
partiu
younger son,
para um sítio
really gathering all that,
distante da
departed
fazenda.
from a different
Imagine o
place.
seguinte:
Imagine all the money
absolutamente
he lived at
nada.
and
Viveu
lost everything. He spent
naquelas
everything.
montanhas uma grande fome.
And when he spent everything,
Começou
a
a
severe
sofrer
famine arose in that country,
e feriu.
and
Chegou a
he
fazer
began to be in
censos
need. So he went on and hired
e desejava
himself and one
sustentar
and all the citizens of the country who sent
aquelas pessoas
him to his fields
e desejava encher o seu estômago
to really feed pigs.
com os que eles comiam
And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything.
e ele, o filho, caiu num ciclo
But he never came to himself. He's in thought about this. How many workers of my
cheio de
father
fome,
have
cheio de
more
fome.
than this? I'm
Levantar-me-ei,
here, I'm starving.
irei ter com meu pai e
I'm gonna
dir-lhe:
go back to my dad. I'm gonna go back to my father.
contra o céu e
Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But then the father said to the servants, bring quickly. When he was coming back, he moved himself with intimate compassion. And then he saw and brought his hand and kissed him. And then the son said again, Father, I have sinned against you and against the heaven. But Father, and the father said to all the servants who were there, said, bring what's best. Bring him the best clothing, the shoes and robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. This is a great story. What about the older son? And the older son who was there, what did he do? He called one of the servants and asked, what is this? What's going on? And yet, if your father killed the calf, what's going on? But he did not really want to enter that. And leaving, the father said, but answering his father, but even myself here, I follow you for so many years, and you've never given me anything, not even one lamb, one sheep. And seeing that the younger son would spend time with prostitutes and drinking and really living that kind of life. And then the father said, son, you've always been there with me because my things are always yours. So it's fair now for us to be happy because your brother was dead, had been lost, and now he's back. It's a long story. So let's talk about this, in a story when we look at this, the journey, so we can better understand things around us. So it starts about the kids working at the farm. The father had two sons, so of course we also know that he's the more inexperienced one. So what does he do? So he has the audacity to talk to himself. I don't want this life anymore. I don't want this life of work, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave. And you give me everything here in life when I'm alive, the inheritance, as opposed to waiting until the father passed away. So imagine if your son comes to you and say, Dad, I'm going to leave my house. Can you give me the my piece of the inheritance? Give me what it's mine. Imagine? A little arrogant, don't you think? I mean, amongst ourselves here, only us and the. So what does his son do? He leaves, goes to this very distant place, distant country, to a different location. And at this place, what does he find? All of the body material desires. He went out with every woman, paid or not paid. He ate all the meals available. He did everything that he wanted to do. But there's something interesting that happens. Maybe that was expected. The money runs out. He runs out of money. And he starts to be hungry in this distant place. Because in this distant place, he's also going through problems. And without having what to eat, that style of life that he had, that he needs to do something. What does he do? Does he come back home? No, he does not come back home. He looks for a job where he is, and he's talking to some people, and he's able to find a job. What kind of job does he find? feeding pigs.
É um emprego bom?
Is it a good job?
Não,
No,
porque ele não tem
because he doesn't
habilidade para fazer
have
isso.
skills to do anything
Por
else.
isso que dão para ele
That's why they give it to him what he's
e
got.
dando aqueles
And
porcos
him feeding those pigs,
de comer para os porcos,
giving food to those pigs, he
desejando
sees himself
o que ele está dando.
desiring what he was feeding those
E nem
porks.
isso ele tem.
And not even that type of food he's got
E nem
himself.
isso
Not even that.
lhe dão.
Literally, not even that he's got.
Então, ele finalmente
So he finally,
cai em si. É uma frase
he
linda.
come to
Ele
grips,
percebe
to understand
que de repente é hora de mudar.
that maybe this is time to change.
O que eu estou fazendo aqui?
It's the famous, what the heck am I doing here?
Quando ele se dá conta
When
de que
he realizes that he's amongst pigs, dirt, dirty,
servindo ao que há de
in the
mais
dirt,
sujo,
serving what's the dirtiest,
nem assim
not
ele
even that,
consegue se manter.
he's able to keep himself alive.
Ele decide que ele precisa voltar.
And he decides that he needs to come back,
E a sua origem volta e cai em si.
come back to his
E
origin.
aqui uma bela parte
And
da
here,
viagem se
in a good
manifesta
part of the travel, manifests his
volta
return.
para casa.
And he comes
Ele
back home.
começa a caminhar de volta.
He starts to walk back home.
Você sabe,
And in that
quem andou
journey,
em
if
terra
you have walked
em asfalto, sabe que se você for a algum
long
lugar,
distances,
você tem que andar a mesma distância para voltar da onde você saiu.
so you all know that once you walk to a place, it's the same distance that you have to remember that you have to come back home.
Ele sai,
He goes,
vai número um,
number two, number three, he
come
feeds,
os porcos,
feeds famine, he feeds the pigs, he
mas ele não
comes to
precisa
grips,
voltar
and then he
definitivamente,
comes back.
porque a parábola nos mostra
But it doesn't really have to go
que
back
antes
all the way, because before he reached home, his
ele já
father
estava esperando
is already waiting for him,
à distância,
sees him at a distance, runs
e o
after him.
simbolismo
The symbolical interaction here is
sempre
beautiful
esperando a volta do filho.
because our father is always waiting for the son's
A
return,
única maneira
for the child's
de ter
return.
filhos distantes é
The
se a
only
gente
way
estiver
for me to keep my kids at distance,
exatamente esperando a sua volta.
he's waiting for us to come back.
E ele corre
And he
impetuosamente.
runs towards his
Ele não
son.
precisa voltar a distância inteira.
His son doesn't have to come back all the distance. Why is
Os
that so?
momentos finais são ajudados pelo
The
filho.
last moment
Diferente
he's carried by his own dad.
uma compaixão que ele não tinha até então
He has a
sentido.
compassion that he has never felt
É
that before.
digno de estar com vocês.
I'm not, I don't deserve this.
Eu não peço que
He
você me dê
says,
aquilo que eu tinha antes.
I'm not asking you to give me what I used to have before,
Eu possa ser útil. Eu possa estar
but
perto de você.
I just want to be close to you. He
Pai,
says to his father,
me
Father,
dê um emprego
give me a
decente.
job, whatever job that is.
E o que o pai fala?
What does the father say?
Ele fala, não,
No,
você é meu filho
you are
immortal.
my son.
Pede aos servos
Ask the
tragam
servants
anel,
to bring a ring,
roupas novas e sandálias.
new clothing, shoes,
Roupas novas porque ele estava
sandals,
cansado.
new clothing because he was he was in tough shape. He was dirty. He
Roupas
was
novas, na é verdade?
torn clothing.
Porque é um
Ring
símbolo
to
do
that
compromisso,
symbolizes
do relacionamento
the relationship, the
entre
commitment
as pessoas.
between people.
E sandálias,
And
porque os
sandals
servos não usavam sandálias.
because the servants don't wear sandals.
Também é o
Because
simbolismo
sandals, it's
de
also
um
a
servo, de
symbol
um escravo.
that you're not a
Você é filho
slave
do
or a
pai.
servant. You are part of the family.
Não é bonito isso?
Isn't that beautiful?
Mas a história não acaba aí.
The story doesn't end there
Tem um irmão.
because there's also a brother.
Vamos conversar um pouquinho do irmão,
What about the
porque
older
isso é uma
brother?
excelente lição para nós também.
Because it's a beautiful lesson for all of us.
Assim, eu
So
acho
if you
assim.
also have the patience to go with me on this,
Vamos pensar um pouquinho sobre essas fases.
let's talk about these phases.
O que está acontecendo ali?
What's happening in these phases?
Quais seriam as fases do
So
filho
what are the
pródigo?
phases of the prodigal
A
son?
primeira a gente já sabe.
First, we know
Começa fazendo.
it's the farm.
Então todos nós
All of us,
começamos nesse local
we
onde
start
nosso
in this place where our Father is
a
with us,
oportunidade
gives us the
de
opportunity
fazer.
to work.
Então a pergunta que nós fazemos é: será que
So the
nós
question that we have is,
a
do we know?
oportunidade de crescimento está
Do we see the opportunity to grow where we are?
Será que nós temos refletido
Have
os
we
motivos
reflected
de
upon,
onde
or
nós começamos e por que
where have we
estamos ali?
started, why we started
E o
there,
que há de aprender
and what is it to learn in our lives?
ainda mais agora,
Even more so now,
pensando e refletindo mais
where we
a
are
respeito
thinking
da
more,
reencarnação,
reflecting more around reincarnation.
nós nascemos onde nós devíamos nascer
We are born where we have to
para
be
ter
born,
lições
or we had to
que
be born
devíamos aprender.
to learn the lessons that we had to learn.
Essas lições.
And what are these lessons?
Quais são as
What are
lições
these
que a
teachings
família nos
that our
traz?
family
Que os
have given
relacionamentos
us?
difíceis nos
The
trazem?
difficult relationships,
Que as dificuldades da juventude nos
that
trazem?
sometimes the difficulties of younger
Será que
years.
nós paramos para ponderar
Have we stopped to
a
ponder
respeito do que nos foi dado?
around what's been given to us?
Nós não
Many, many
temos a
times
devida noção das coisas.
we don't give the right emotion
Nós
to
não
things.
entendemos até a
We don't
importância do
understand
trabalho e o esforço
until we
que foi
develop
feito
ourselves, the
para nos
strength,
alimentar.
the work that our family has done to
É possível que a gente não
support us.
reconheça e não seja grato aos nossos pais.
It's very possible that we don't recognize that and we're not grateful to what's
Vamos
been
mais
given to
além,
us.
porque agora nós já
We go
entendemos
even
uma
beyond.
possibilidade. Nós não somos gratos aos nossos
We're not
mentores
grateful
espirituais,
for all of our spiritual
que trabalham
mentors
e trabalharam para
that
que possamos
work and continue to work, that we can have in this incarnation
da história.
what we need in this moment of history.
É bom refletirmos a respeito
It's
disso
good to reflect
quando nós temos filhos.
around these things because when we're young,
A
we
gente
don't
fica
stop to think about
pensando
those. Sometimes I ask myself,
o filho pródigo, o filho mais
maybe we
velho.
don't. Sometimes we act like the prodigal son. We have the
Achamos que o
arrogance
mundo nos deve,
to think that the world, owes
que a
us
gente
something.
pede para o mundo que
Then
nos
we
dê
ask the world
antecipadamente
to give us
tudo o que
in
nós
advance
achamos que nós
everything that
merecemos.
we believe the world, owes us.
Talvez seja
Perhaps
uma atitude de ingratidão,
might be an behavior of
uma ideia
ingratitude,
que aquela
or an
pessoa
idea
tem que fazer isso para mim,
that that person has to do this for me,
aquele emprego é meu,
or that job is for me,
eu mereço aquele emprego.
not for somebody else. I deserve that. Not
Mas não
anybody
é
else
assim.
does. We don't realize
Infelizmente não é bem assim.
that sometimes that's not how things work.
Nós já somos jovens,
But we're still young,
ignorantes,
right?
desconhecemos
Still arrogant,
as
still
coisas,
unknown,
porque tudo nos foi dado
because everything has been
e
given
não
to us,
conseguimos ainda aprender
and we
como trabalhar
have
para
not
ter as coisas
understood
maravilhosas.
how good it is to work for things.
Eventualmente, então,
So eventually,
é possível que espiritualmente a gente se
and
lembre disso.
possibly spiritually,
A gente
we
fala,
may
puxa,
remember that.
eu quero distante
I want to leave home. I want distance from my family.
e
And
nós
of course,
paramos para
we go to the
olhar
furthest place.
as parábolas. Não são só os
But
ensinamentos
look at the
nossos,
letters from this parable. It's not only the parent teachings,
físicos, não as
not only the
parábolas,
physical
a nossa
changes,
geografia
not only a geographic change,
mental e
but it's a
espiritual.
mental one
Nós
or
nos
spiritual one,
tornamos
nevertheless.
um valor
Once we go to a
distante.
distant
Fazemos
country,
uma viagem
we
onde nós
do this trip.
saímos daquilo que nós
We leave
somos, nossa essência
from
espiritual,
what we are,
e
our
somos
essence,
um pouco
and starts to really
materialista.
start losing sometimes in this materialistic world.
Nós somos espíritos imortais.
But we are immortal
A gente fala
spirits.
mais tarde, quem sabe,
We say
eu vou
maybe later
encontrar as
on,
coisas do
who
espírito.
knows? I'll find the spiritual
Eu vou
things,
trabalhar,
the things of the
eu vou
spirit.
curtir, eu vou
Right now, I'm going to
aproveitar.
work. I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to have
Tem uma
fun.
frase curiosa que muitos jovens falam hoje em dia.
There's a great phrase today that a lot of teenagers
Na
say.
verdade, you only live once. Você só vive
You
uma
only
vez.
live once. Have you guys heard that before?
Não é bem assim,
It's not like that.
aparentemente.
Apparently, we don't. We learn it's
Então,
not
se
like
nós
that.
temos que fazer tudo o que é
So we think that we have to
preciso,
do everything in this
a gente se
moment,
distancia
and we
dos
distance
valores de base,
ourselves
da
from the basic
simplicidade da
values,
fazenda,
from the simplicity
do
of
dia a
the
dia.
farm, of the day to
Então,
day.
a pergunta que não quer calar
So the
é a
question,
seguinte:
the $64,000
quais
question
são os
is,
nossos valores essenciais?
what are our essential values today? How are we
Como
dealing with them?
pessoas e como famílias?
With our families, with the
Nós
loved
temos esses
ones?
valores dentro de nós.
We have these values inside of
Muitas
us,
vezes a vida
but many
acontece,
times, or
a
oftentimes,
gente caminha de
life
maneira que a
happens
gente acha
and we
que
walk
estamos
in a
sendo
path
orientados por aqueles
that
valores.
we
Mas quando a gente
already,
para para
built for
refletir na
those.
nossa vida, a gente vê
and we stop to examine our lives. So sometimes, my friends, it's important that we feel a little hungry. Famine happens to really give value and redirect our lives. Hunger here, it's a symbol, but we're talking about spiritual hunger. So the question is, these moments of our stories as a society, what kind of hunger are we talking about that really hates our hearts? What kind of emptiness do we feel these days? When we look outside and we look inside and it feels like something is missing. When we feel like society is not feeling that. In this last year and a half, there's been a huge opportunity to reflect on this hunger of values, of spiritual values. That certain way may bring a lot of doubt to a lot of us. We may still need to reflect of our life before and our life now. Are we too far away from the farm? Like individual beings, like society, have we lost the way back home? Are we more worried about what's happening here now that makes us feel good, that makes us happy, but it doesn't last? Do you think that our happiness is really based on things from the earth? Status, a job, and money, and house where we live, and relationships that we have. All these things are going to go away eventually. The house, the car, the relationship, the job, the status, everything's going to end, come to an end in this life. So we're all hungry. We're all hungry. We all have this hunger or spiritual hunger. The question is when and how. Because until we keep concentrating on life only from the material point of view, it's going to be there. So what else does this story tell us? So we want to insist in the life of material, because once we stop that spiritual hunger, we're not going to think about returning home until that spiritual hunger is not satisfied, because that's how things are. That things outside of our own self, the life, work, job, status, it's gonna make us forget sometimes. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having a car, having a house, having a job, having a status, having relationships. Everything is very important. But maybe it would be interesting to think about what is the importance that we give to those things in detriment to the, or instead of focusing on things of the spiritual nature. Because those are the things that feed us. In this moment where he's feeding the pigs, why is this work does not really keep us? What about this non-stop life that we live, making money, to have more status, to have more this, more that? It's a vicious cycle, as we know. Why doesn't this feed us? So we learn that this race by itself, it's not gonna fix our spiritual hunger. Eventually, if we don't learn in this life, when are we gonna learn? The next one. Because remember, we expand our perception with reincarnation, with how Spiritism gives us the knowledge that this life, it's not the only life that we have. It's a much longer life that we have, our spiritual one.
Essa é a beleza das
This
parábolas,
is the beauty of the
porque nós
parables,
podemos abrir os
because we can
pedaços do
really
origami japonês.
dissect.
Temos
It's like an
lados
origami.
diferentes. A gente
There's
pode
so many
pensar na
sides, so
vida,
many views,
mas pode pensar também na
but
vida do espírito.
we could think about the life
Então,
and also spiritual life.
com os
So
porcos,
being
ou
with the
seja,
pigs,
estamos
that is
na atmosfera mais suja
in the
possível,
dirtiest place that he could ever
nós
thought,
conseguimos encontrar o
we
ar
could still
mais
not
puro
find
que a nossa alma
what
precisa,
keeps us alive.
fazendo o trabalho mais sujo
So
possível,
doing the dirtiest kind of job ever,
fisicamente,
physically speaking, obviously,
não vai saciar
it's not gonna
a nossa fome, não vai dar o que
stop our hunger.
nos de comer.
It's not gonna give us what to
Nesse
eat.
ambiente, nessa
In
terra
this environment, in
que
this
só se
distant place,
preocupa com as coisas
that we
físicas,
only think about the
ninguém
physical
vai nos
things,
dar de comer.
nobody's gonna give us food.
A ponto de muitas vezes
To the point that
o
sometimes
que os porcos comem,
the pigs eat,
alguém vai nos dar.
not even that, somebody's gonna give us. We're also worried about
Saciar a nossa fome
to really
individual
feed our hunger, to stop our
predica
hunger
um egoísmo
of this
momentâneo.
of our selfishness that's
A nossa
momentarily,
ignorância da vida espiritual,
our
acreditamos
my
que
ignorance of the
para adquirir
spiritual
essa
life,
fome nós temos que
that we
competir.
think that we have to compete with one another.
Porque se eu tiver, eu tenho
Because if I
mais.
have more,
E se você me
and if
der
you have,
item, você não come. Então,
if you
ficamos
don't
sempre
give me what
pressionando
you owe me, you're not gonna eat.
cada um por si.
It's one for its own, each for its own.
E de que o meu bem está
You see that my
no
good,
seu mal-estar.
it's where your evil is, and your evil is
O
where
meu bem está.
my good is.
Então, a gente age
In this Manichaeism, so we think in our own
e emocionalmente
intellectual or
de
emotional
que se eu tiver,
dissonance
você
that
não pode ter.
if I
E se
have, you
você
cannot
tem,
have,
eu não
and
posso.
if you have, I cannot have myself.
Estamos todos juntos com os porcos.
We're all together on this, folks.
Ninguém ajuda ninguém
Nobody is helping anybody.
na nossa fome espiritual.
Everybody's hungry, spiritually speaking.
Serão esses os momentos atuais?
Those are the present moments that we live,
Bom,
aren't those?
eventualmente,
Eventually,
nós caímos nesse
we
jogo
realize.
para cair nesse
So, in order for us to
temos que
realize,
ir acima de
we
nós
need to
mesmos.
be beyond ourselves.
Nós temos que achar que nós somos
We
mais
have
do
to
que somos.
be. We have to think that we are more than we are.
E caindo
Correct?
nessa
So when
realidade,
once we come back to reality,
vamos ter uma ideia mais
we have an
sensata
idea, a more concrete
do
idea
que e quem nós somos.
of who and what we are.
Caindo assim,
So
a
realizing
pergunta que não quer
the
calar
question, the
é
$64,000 question
quando
is,
voltaremos à nossa
when
essência,
are we going to go back to our essence?
aquela que a gente já conhece.
The one that we already know.
Nós, como espíritos imortais em
We,
desenvolvimento,
like immortal spirits,
ou personagens
not these
físicos,
characters that we have in this
quando
life,
voltaremos a entender
when are we going to come
quem
back
somos
to understand what we are,
espiritualmente? Espíritos
spiritually
imortais.
speaking? We're immortal spirits, we know that,
Pela estrada da vida muitas vezes.
walking towards the journey of life
Transforma
many,
tudo
many
se
times.
transforma.
And this time, everything transforms
Porque se nós
themselves.
pensarmos bem, amigos,
Because if we think about it,
nós sobrevivemos
we
a todas
survive
as grandes dificuldades da
all
nossa vida
of the difficulties from our
e das
lives
vidas prévias.
and the previous ones too.
Somos todos
So we are
campeões
all
em navegar
champions
momentos difíceis.
navigating difficult times.
Não existe momento no passado
There isn't
que
a
nós não
past
sobrevivemos.
moment that we have not survived.
Se a gente se atenta a isso no coração
If we really connect it to our own hearts,
e que o Pai
that the farm exists and then the Father is always there,
caminhar, mesmo entre os porcos.
even within the pigs.
Mas essa é uma beleza desse
This is a
ensinamento,
beautiful message
porque a volta
because the return
acontece
happens.
e ela é
And
certa,
the returns is certain
porque o Pai está
because the
sempre
Father is
esperando
always waiting for us
no caminho, ansioso,
on the way,
ou seja,
anxious.
todo o amor do universo.
That is all the love that our Father has for us.
Familiares de outras vidas que talvez você não se lembre,
Maybe family members
familiares
that
que
from
você
other lives that we don't
talvez não
remember.
se lembre, que não estão mais
Maybe some
conosco,
family members from this life that we remember really well.
sempre
They're
torcendo por você,
always
esperando que
rooting
você volte
for us to do well, expecting us back,
ao que há de melhor em
you
você,
know, to the best
a sua
of our
essência.
abilities.
E quando a gente começa esse
And when
processo,
we
é difícil,
start that
porque nessa
return
loucura do
back,
campeonato,
that journey
o
back,
filho pródigo está
because in this craziness that the prodigal
roupas
son,
sujas,
he's got dirty clothes,
estressado,
he's tired.
será que somos nós,
Maybe it's us.
em momentos de nossa vida,
Moments in
que
our
estamos
lives that
exaustos, a gente não
we're
aguenta
so
mais,
tired, we can't go on.
não tem força hoje para fazer uma
Maybe
oração,
we don't have the strength to do a prayer today.
aquela vontade de ir para o centro,
Maybe that desire to go to the Spiritist Center.
aquele desejo de abrir aquele livrinho de
Maybe that
esperança,
desire to open a little,
mas a gente vai
book that's
ficando
going to be bring us hope.
e aquilo começa
And then he
a
starts to
tomar
really
forma dentro
start
de nós,
forming itself,
fala a nossa alma, e naquele
speaking
momento
to our soul.
a
And in
fome
that
começa
very
a
precious
chegar.
moment, spiritual
Você
help takes
começa assim,
place.
passo a
You
passo,
start step by step,
com pequenas
slowly,
vitórias que muitas vezes a gente
small
não
wins
percebe.
that we
É
don't
aquele
know
momento de
sometimes.
paciência, quando a
The
gente
moment of
deixa
patience
e não fala o que
in a
pensa,
craziness around us that we knew was going to work. In
onde
the
a gente
moment
sorri
where
e
we
sai da nossa
smile,
vida para dar a mão para alguém que
that
está
we move away from our
necessidade.
away in order to extend a
É um
hand
momento onde faz aquela
to somebody
oração
that's in
de
need.
abre o coração para Deus.
You open our hearts
A
to
gente deixa
God,
rolar as emoções que
and we
muitas
leave
vezes
those emotions, let those emotions overflow
são
from our
momentos de
hearts.
grande vitória.
Those are great moments of
Não
victory
como
that
vitória,
we don't know
porque
as victory.
tem que ter
We
só
just see it as the way they are.
artifício.
Oh, just
Mas são pequenas vitórias que vão
fire,
carregada
cracks.
de volta
So this return
para o nosso Pai.
back to
E
our
que
home,
maravilha
and how
sabermos que
beautiful it is to know that
completos sozinhos.
we don't have to go
Não
all the way
estamos
back by
completos
ourselves.
ainda. Não dá como
We have to walk
não
all the way
andar,
back, but we don't have to walk all the way back by ourselves.
mas parte do
But
caminho
part of it,
nós estaremos acompanhados.
our Father will be there with us.
E acompanhado é muito mais fácil caminhar.
And when somebody accompanies
Precisa
us, I mean, it's a lot
ser
easier
diferente.
to do the walk. When somebody's there with us,
E
it's a
naquele
lot easier.
momento onde nos volta
In that
o
moment when
filho espiritual, onde ele
we
começa a
come
demonstrar
back, we reconnect with spiritual, our spiritual
é
beings,
difícil.
the spirituality,
Faz
still
parte
very
da gente
difficult
deixar para
nevertheless.
trás a nossa vida antiga.
To let go our
Espiritual,
old
mas é
life.
muito difícil.
To let go our old life is very difficult.
Nós temos exemplo de várias
You have
pessoas que
many,
tiveram
many
que deixar isso.
examples where they had to let go. For example, Paul,
E mais recentemente, nossos amigos,
more interesting,
Divaldo Franco,
Divaldo and those
tiveram
guys,
que
they
experimentar
had to
a
let
vida.
back,
Não estamos
just
pedindo para que vocês
to,
tenham isso a esse nível,
to leave back a lot of the things that
mas
they
é
wanted.
necessário entender
It's necessary for us to understand
para chegar em outros
that in
lugares
order for us
é
to go to new
necessário
places,
mudar de vez em quando.
change is needed.
Para voltarmos ao trabalho
In
divino,
order for us to go back to the
trabalhar
work,
mais juntos,
to work
é
more,
necessário deixarmos para trás
we need to let go
o mundo que foi.
the old life that we had.
Então essa volta é muito
So
interessante,
this return is
porque
beautiful
não vamos estar sozinhos.
because we're not alone.
Você já percebeu isso na
Have
sua
you guys
vida?
ever thought,
Você já deixou entrar no seu coração que você não
have you guys ever let
no seu
in
caminho de volta?
in your heart when you're alone, letting anybody within your
Mesmo que
heart when
você
you're
não
alone,
veja que ele está
even if you
vindo,
don't see it or feel it,
você já entende, pelo
you
entendimento
already
de Deus,
understand
que os seus espíritos protetores, os seus
that
agentes
your
espirituais
protect
estão
your
sempre
benefactor spirits are always there with
e
you.
se não ficou claro, amigos,
And if it's not
vamos
clear yet,
perguntar mais uma vez aqui.
let
Quem
us ask
é
ourselves, who are we in the parable?
o mestre da fazenda, não é verdade?
So, are we
Então há
the
muitas
master from the
pessoas,
farm?
e é muito interessante isso,
So,
porque muitas vezes a gente
it's
se
very
vê
interesting because
nos pés, no caminho, nas calças
we,
do filho pródigo. Mas quem somos nós na parábola?
when we look at ourselves in the parable,
Porque se nós
we should be
voltarmos
asking
para
that question.
agora,
If we come back, look at the
nós
steps,
tratamos muito do filho pródigo.
we talked a lot about
Mas
the
existe a
prodigal son,
parte final
but there's
daquele,
also that final
daquele
part,
extra
the extra,
do
credit
outro irmão
of the
que
other
fez
brother.
maravilhosa o outro irmão.
Curious thing, that other brother, right? Because
Porque o outro irmão
the
está
other
nos museu
older
das
brother is
crianças,
also there.
está no
This
museu
is a
das
picture from
crianças.
Rembrandt.
Eu tive inclusive a honra de
It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. Here's the older brother. Here is the younger brother with dirty clothes. Here's the father. Not sure if you can see it, but there's his clothing are very dirty and old and torn. If you look at the hands of the father, one hand is masculine, one hand is feminine. Zooming in on the picture, it's the beautiful. We see father, but in reality, it's a father and a mother. There was a very patriarchal society that we live back then. But the picture is amazing because there's no sex in God, right? God is a mother and a father. He's both. God is both. And this picture here really talks about it. What about the older brother? He doesn't really seem very happy, right? Because what's the complaint? Why is he complaining? I mean, come on, Dad. I'm here working for you all this time. You haven't given me anything, not even a sheep for me to really enjoy with my friends. Isn't that curious? Because it's in the beginning of the parable where the prodigal son, the younger brother, asks for his part of the inheritance, and to split up the inheritance. So the older brother has already been given his part of the inheritance. So why is he complaining? Because the return of his younger son theoretically had nothing from him, but he thinks. Why isn't he happy that his younger brother came back home? It's his brother, right? Isn't that curious? Isn't that interesting to think about? For him, in his thought, he's also close to the pigs because he's also thinking that he deserves more than the other brother, even though he's already been given his share. So it's important to remember that passage of Jesus, who is my brother? Who is my mother? What kind of interesting or curious attitude? What does the father tell Jesus? Quiet down, son, because everything that's from the world, your brother was dead, now he's alive. Poetical, a sentence here. He was dead from the spiritual things, and now he's alive in freedom because he understood the real meaning of life. Because there are many things, many people that are living from the material part of you, but they're dead from the spiritual one. There are a lot of folks that have not realized there's something bigger, something beyond. But are we also the older brother, the younger brother? Are we still worried about what others is getting and not us? Do we have difficulty celebrating happiness from the others, happiness from others without judging? We still think from a very insecure way in our hearts. If somebody has something, it's taken away from me. If something has more status than I do, it's less than for me. We are still away from the real farm of thoughts that we're talking about here. And this outside world is full of thoughts like that, where we still have difficulties helping others because we think that he or she doesn't deserve that. We think that we are the ones that deserve it, not them. What kind of cruel life we have sometimes? Are we sometimes the prodigal son? Are we sometimes the older brother? shouldn't we also be the Father?
O que nos impede de ser
What does
o pai,
prevent us from being the
de
Father?
agir como o pai?
To act like a Father.
O que nos impede de ir
What prevents us from going
aqueles que estão
towards
próximos de
those
nós
who are on
com
the way
tranquilidade? O que nos
to
impede de
receiving
ser
good?
mais tolerantes?
Why aren't we more
Como o
tolerant
pai foi? Porque o pai poderia ter
like the
dito:
Father was?
não te dou. Mas ele sabia que cada um de
But
nós
he
tinha o
knew
seu tempo.
that each one of us had our own time.
Então,
So,
como deve ter ido no coração ver o filho sair?
how difficult that would that be to
A
see a
gente
son
entende
leaving
a
the
free
house?
will, porque o pai entende a realidade
The
espiritual.
Father understands free will.
Nós entendemos a realidade
Do we
espiritual dos
also
nossos filhos.
understand the freedom from our
Será que
brothers
nós
and
entendemos a
siblings
realidade do momento espiritual de todos
and
nós
the
que estamos
spiritual reality
próximos
from
de
those that
Deus?
are around us?
Será que nós somos tolerantes?
Are we tolerant enough?
Será que nós estamos de braços
Tolerant enough,
abertos para recebê-los
and also
espiritualmente
with open arms
quando eles caem?
to welcome those who have left before?
Não seria isso também que nós gostaríamos para nós mesmos?
Wouldn't be that something for us to learn as well?
São perguntas que nós fazemos não para
Those are
nos
questions,
colocar
folks,
abaixo,
not for us to bring us
mas
down,
para suscitar um
but
pensamento,
rather for
uma
us to
reflexão sobre onde nós estamos
pump us up
no
and
meio de uma
feed the
sociedade
reflection
que
where we
come
are in our
pigs.
lives amidst a society that are still thinking about feeding
Agora,
pigs.
o bom é que a sociedade
The
é
good thing
fruto
about
dos
it is
indivíduos.
society is the
Quando
product of
nós começamos
individuals.
a voltar para casa,
When we start to
a
come back,
sociedade como um todo volta para casa.
society as a whole will also come
Esse é
back
o
home.
questionamento do momento.
That's the beautiful part
O
of
que
it.
nós faremos a partir
What do
de
we
agora?
do from now on?
Isso é que importa.
This is what it matters
Onde
most.
nós estivermos,
Where we are,
com quem
wherever we
estivermos,
are, what we live,
que porcos nós alimentaremos,
pigs that we feed,
com a
things
pergunta:
that are more important.
de que faremos aqui em frente?
What are we doing?
Vamos retornar para a nossa vida como era antes
Are we come back to our lives the way it was
de nos
before?
preocuparmos com as coisas do espírito o
Are we
dia
going to worry
todo,
about the things in the spirit,
deixando-nos
allowing
derreter nas
us
coisas do corpo material? Vamos sem
to
querer
move
parar
away
de
from our
viver
material,
todos os dias.
ambition so much?
A gente está aqui só para pagar o mortgage, para pagar o
We're
aluguel,
here only to pay the mortgage or rent
para pagar os
or
nossos
loans or
filhos.
put kids in school. Those are all important things, of course.
Mas e a fome espiritual?
But
Quem vai
what about our
alimentar essa
spiritual
fome?
hunger? Who's going to feed? Who's going to
Porque nesse
feed
mundo,
that? Because in this life,
ninguém vai alimentar ninguém,
nobody's going to feed
a não
anybody
ser que a gente volte para casa,
unless we all come back
mentalmente,
home,
espiritualmente.
mentally speaking, spiritually
Então, essa é a
speaking.
nossa pergunta.
So this is
E
our
é uma
question.
pergunta que
There's a
nós vamos
beautiful
nos esquecer.
remembrance
Nós vamos nos esquecer, porque a gente se
that
esquece.
we
A
forget
gente não vê
sometimes, and we
mais.
always
A gente
forget.
só vê aquilo com nossos
We
olhos.
only see what's ahead of us.
É essa.
The remember
É o
that we
final
should
da vida
all
quando Deus
have
diz
is
ao filho:
then he says to the other son,
filho, filha,
son or daughter,
tu sempre
you are
estarás comigo.
always there with me,
Todas as minhas
and all my
bênçãos
things
são
are
tuas.
yours.
Isso é no coração.
Your soul,
Deus que
God in you,
estás comigo
you are always with me,
em todo momento.
every single moment,
E tudo que é meu
and everything that's mine,
é
it's
teu.
yours.
Tudo que você procura
Everything that you're looking for,
já é
it's
teu.
already yours.
Já é teu.
It's already yours.
O amor, a felicidade
Love,
já é teu.
happiness, it's already yours.
Basta você entender.
It's only for you to understand what's in your heart.
Mas era justo alegrarmos
So it was
e
fair
regozijarmos
to get
nessa
happy and
amizade,
also to joy, to bring us to joy because this relationship,
porque seu
because
irmão morto e
your
revivido
brother was
foi
dead
perdido e foi
and
achado.
came back to life. He
Não
had
só
been
para
lost
representar
and he
em nós
found,
a certeza espiritual
not only in
de que
our
vamos
own hearts,
sobreviver
the
esta
certainty
crise,
that we are going to
essa
survive
dificuldade que a gente está
this
passando.
difficulty, this moment.
No caminho,
But on the way
ainda
back,
teremos a oportunidade
we
de
still have the
sermos
opportunity
felizes pelo sucesso
to be
uns dos
happy
outros. Não
with the
sermos
successes
tristes.
from each other, to bring joy
É
to each other.
melhor
This is much, much better
caminhar com parceiros
than
nessa estrada
to walk alone. It's much better to walk with
espiritual.
partners in the spiritual journey.
Então,
So,
do fundo do meu coração,
from the
deixando
bottom of
isso
my
com
heart,
você, lembrando que vocês já estão
I'll leave
caminhando
you
nessa
with that
estrada.
thought that you are already on that
E olhe ao
pathway.
redor.
And look
Esses
around you.
são alguns
Those are some
dos
of the
seus
people,
companheiros de viagem.
some of the partners from your
Quando
trip.
você tropeçar e ficar
When
cansado,
you trip,
filho,
when you fall,
eu
remember,
sempre estarei
son,
com você.
daughter, you're always there with me.
Lembrando Paulo mais uma vez,
remembering Paul. So if God is with you, nothing's against you. What can't you do if God's with you? So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all. I'm very happy. Always a pleasure to be here. I'll hope to see you soon. If you'd like to keep in touch, here's my social media, and do not forget this. Thank you for your attention, for your patience, and I'll send you back the. It's difficult for us not to get emotional from this beautiful message for reflection. We thank you so much, Dan. You are a son of this house, and we have here in our hearts. So I'd like to use this opportunity that we all here gathered together in the same goal to to learn more about ourselves, like sons and daughters of God that we are, children of God that we are. Let us use this moment to think about those that could not be here today. So all there's a lot of folks out there that are going through a lot of difficulties that need that hug, that individualized, tailored, spiritual hug, the love that we all have in our hearts, and that we can already donate to those who are in need. So let us seek Jesus, the doctor of the souls, divine friend. Give us the strength during these difficult moments. Help us out so that together we could enter our own hearts. And there we can find what we need. And there we can find the love, the compassion, solidarity, companionship, fraternity, and also to really send those beautiful vibrations to all of our brothers and sisters that whatever there may be pain and suffering, famine, hunger from the body or from the spirit, may our hug be felt and also serve as a vehicle so that these folks receive hope, courage, so they can continue progressing, continue marching with the certainty that God awaits, as we've learned this morning. So they never really lose hope that everything passes because tomorrow will be a new day. A more serene moment. Jesus, our friend, we ask you to really embrace our planet, bring peace and strength. All of the politicians and leaders from our countries, every country, they have within their hands the very difficult task of leading, of governing. May they be touched by the feeling of equality, also having the discernment to act. Dear Jesus, allow us, Professor, to ask for our own selves. We've been given so much, and we also want you to know about our gratitude, all of the blessings that we have received. And Jesus, you know our difficulties. You know our afflictions, our limitations. We ask you not to take those away from us, but we ask you instead so they can give us the strength and the courage necessary for us to keep going. Because we know, Master and Professor Jesus, that those are needed for our own development. That's how we renew ourselves. It's how we learn. And if we get closer, and this is when we get closer to you. We thank you once again, our dear Professor, for this beautiful morning and the presence of our spiritual friends who are here, our mentor of the Spiritist Center, for all the care and the love that has been given us. And we say goodbye, asking you once again that you may stay with us, but also helping us for us to stay with you. So be it. Thank you. A good weekend, wishes of a good weekend for everybody. And this concludes our translation for the morning. Thank you all, folks.